Hi, my name is Katarina Dimitrijevic. I'm a PhD candidate at the Department of Design, Goldsmiths University of London. This is the audiovisual presentation for the Lives and Afterlives of Plastic conference and interdisciplinary dialogue on the social and environmental issues that surround plastic. Presentation is called Plasticized. I, Katarina, am the principal member of research practice named KraalD. KraalD derives from South African term used for a small rural community or for livestock enclosure. This is a UK-based design advocacy and will be referred to it as a KraalD. KraalD is combining educative design advocacy, plastic waste and marine scientific data. Praxis suggests approaching ocean toxicity through acting and reflecting upon plastic thing, that is, plasticized transposal, and share visual narrative outcomes of the 3 high educational design transposal workshops held in 2015 in England. Visualizing chronic disaster is explored with North Atlantic Gyre, imagining garbage patch, creating micro-installations, making and cooking toxic soup, and experiencing plastic properties. Thus, this self-practice case study will allow invisible marine debris to become visible through do-it-yourself and do-it-with-others participatory approaches. This practice-based research will reflect the design advocacy ecocentric by Rosie Bradotti perspective on the everyday entanglement with plastic things and disposal practices. This research platform mobilizes micro-insights around the perception of general public and individual relations towards reuse, plastic disposal, marine pollution within the locality of London, the southeast and southwest of England. The praxis aims to engage self and plastic thing in promoting minimization of future landfill. As KraalD is embedded in a social narrative, this public exposure and engagement is essential for the research as both generating insights from the multitude of HE student stakeholders and for the further dissemination. The practice argues that the changing relation to disposal is a changing relation to oneself, borrowed from Kay Hawkins. The Designtransposal workshop is combining design advocacy and marine scientific data as a participation platform to support reuse, making, and discussion on social things, borrowed by Brown. Cultural, political, and marine qualities of plastic waste. The research methodology explores design workshops as a social research method by Rosner and Talt, entangled with designing new processes and meanings, engendering new disposal vocabulary, languaging for the KraalD. This paper will narrate, or presentation will narrate, the making outcomes of the 3 design transposal workshops and visually map and abruptly reflect on findings and subsequent conversational analysis. I and we live in plastic debris era. In the first decade of the 21st century, plastic production has quadrupled in comparison to the whole of the last century. Recycling of Used Plastic Limited informs that over 1.5 million tons of mixed household plastic packaging is disposed of in landfill each year in the UK only. Recoup 2012. The plastic trash that flows into ocean, originating from United States and Europe, is due to urban and coastal litter rather than mishandling of collected waste. Findings by Kasuto. The United Nations Joint Group of Experts on Scientific Aspect in Marine Pollution, JSAMP, estimated that land-based sources account up to 80% of the world marine pollution, with consisting of 60 to 95% of plastic debris. Transposed by wind, the majority of land-littered waste ultimately will end up in the ocean. Jambek et al. Informs us that the 8 million tons of plastic waste ends up in the ocean per annum. This is already outdated data, which rises constantly. Currently, the planet's oceans from largest global landfills are the most vulnerable and unprotected ecosystem on a spaceship Earth, borrowed from the Buckminster Fuller. Anthropogenic litter is present in all marine habitats, from coast to the most remote points in the oceans. Plastic and metals are the most prevalent litter found at the deep sea bed. Plastic waste is concentrated in 5 rotating currents known as gyres. Contemporary marine research has revealed that synthetic polymers are toxic pollutants and they are spread throughout all the planet's oceans. Right now, 269 tons of plastic composed of 5.25 trillion particles are afloat at sea, finding by Erickson et al. The impact of plastic pollution after entering the food chain through ingestions are cancer, malformation, and impaired reproductive ability, finding by Takada. Plasticize, nature and plastic things within the Anthropocene. The term Anthropocene is employed here to denote the current interval of anthropogenic global environmental change. This is a KraalD's land installation, which on the left-hand side image shows plastic agglomerate, which is located at the same beach as the micro land installation has been recorded as I am a sea pet bottle at Adriatic Sea. There is now compelling evidence to show that humanity's impact on the Earth's atmosphere, oceans and wildlife has pushed the planet into the new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. From the scientific axiom, the new terminology's current human dominance of biological, chemical, and geological processes on Earth. From the design axiom, praxis refers to the environmental phenomena of this presentation, as being or feeling plasticized. Visualizing gyre. How do we visualize gyre? As much of the debris in the near-surface oceans collected in so-called garbage patches were due to the convergence of the surface floor, and the debris is trapped for decades to up to millennia. Using the design and craft point of view, praxis explores how can we gaze into the closest gyre to Europe, into the North Atlantic one. The process of making and visualizing will be initiated from the lantern's fish point of view, and their mundane entanglement with gyre patch. Workshops that will follow will propose the collaborative visualization of the North Atlantic Gyre using a co-creative strategy as the framework for the future thinking and action supporting change towards global marine plastic depollution. Visioning and creating three-dimensional sketches. Praxis proceeded to try to visualize the gyre patch. Sibylle, England and Froilan findings showed that 6 major gyre patches emerges as one of the 5 subtropical basins for each main gyre, but additionally unreported 6 patch in a barren sea. Marine debris collected in so-called garbage patches poses a severe threat to the near-surface oceans and environmental life. The findings are by Tsugmori, Kubota, Moore et al., Law et al., Lebreton et al., Maximenko et al., Derek, Barnes, Gregory, and Houghton. So the amount of scientific data that is currently accumulated is rather overwhelming. Workshop participants were asked to visualize a segment of North Atlantic Gyre, the gyre patch, which is otherwise invisible to humans. The group was asked to role-play, that is, approaching phenomena not from the human vista, but to transpose themselves and visually imagine the gyre as the lantern fish. To experience the gyre patch as a beautifully radiating microplastic cloud, as a source of desired food, illuminated by the moon at night. This small fish performs a mundane vertical migration, as during daylight hours it can be found in the depth of 400 meters, but at night ascends to up to 100 to up to 40 or 30 meters below the surface. Its habitat is the mesopelagic or twilight zone popularly, but the night feeding grounds are towards the sea surface. Thus, the lanternfish is the workshop reuse hero, as the species eats up to 24 tons of plastic per year just from the North Pacific patch only, findings by Davidson and Ash. This slide presents 3 invites for the KraalD Designtransposal high educational workshops held during 2012. The first workshop was held under University for Creative Arts umbrella as a part of the Creative Challenge Week in London. The second at Falmouth University, at Pannel campus at Cornwall, with Sustainable Design student group. And lastly, the third workshop was part of the PhD by Design Postgraduate Design Conference held at Goldsmiths, University of London in 2015. The workshop questions: how can I or we gaze into the radical environmental changes facing us in the 21st century and visualize toxic chronic disaster in a joyful way? The workshop is a participation platform, facilitating rather than dictating. This is a lot of scoping. The workshop primary objective is to visualize the future possibilities for the ocean plastic depollution, using plastic disposal to create three-dimensional gyre installations. This micro-conversation platform incorporates joyful activism, trash aesthetics, craft making, and naturally promotes environmental awareness. How do we gaze? The first pilot workshop was a part of Creative Challenge Week in London. And as the presentation came to the end, there was an awkward silence in the space. I told the group, we are basically lethal to the nature and therefore lethal to ourselves. The workshop floor was strewn with plastic trash. Let's make something, I said. Fish only ever view their food looking up. Hanging their creation from frame of stripped umbrella, the students adopted the fish eye view. The workshop followed the KraalD strategy to incorporate joyful activism, trash aesthetics, and do it with others' craft making. The 2-hour fast-paced pilot workshop derived a microgroup conversation around the current apathetic attitude towards recycling, street looting, and climate change in UK and France, while engaged together in making. The second Designtransposal workshop, led by KraalD, was held at Falmouth University Pannel campus in Cornwall. It was a full-day participation engagement with 32 first-year sustainable product design students, allocating students' own plastic waste stream and interpreting the gyre patch. Conversation flowed hand in hand with the process of making, discussing reuse versus recycling strategies and local marine pollution. I discovered that a handful of students are proactively engaged with the local foundation Surface Against Sewage, SUS, participating fully in community beach cleanups, and were well informed in oceanic changes. I found that the result of living in the contextual proximity where the land meets the sea is inevitable social material environmental changes in progress were visible, thus experiential and relevant to the students or to the parties engaged, stakeholders engaged in the workshop. And this was in a stark contrast to the apathetic response experienced with their pilot workshop counterparts with the students in London. The last, third collaborative workshop was held at Goldsmiths University in London, and it was a part of a two-day graduate student conference program, PhD by Design, that year theme, Researching Across Difference. The third workshop expanded and explored the peripheral properties of gyre, that is, oceanic plastic soup characteristics, specifically floatism. The small group consisted of 5 design and 1 political science graduate students from various higher educational institutions, graduate institutions across the UK. The third workshop included making or cooking of marine soup, while discussing the microparticles' propensity to absorb waterborne pollutants, thereby becoming toxic, that is, releasing BPA, and other various toxins into the seawater. As one of the participants stated, it feels like the end of the world is forthcoming. Overwhelmed by data. These are the post-reflections, which are still in progress. Denial and the hegemony of everyday plastic litter. Looking at the social thing, and that is a plastic bag in this case. Aligned with the various bans on the plastic bags in UK recently. We will continue these post-reflective conversations. Metacognitively, workshop opened up for praxis to acknowledge the potential of emotional sensitivity of the design practice. As the participation group reflected upon the new materiality paradigm, plastic toxicity, and decline in biological diversity as a part of the whole entangled complexity of everyday living, an additional biosphere of the plastisphere. Employing post-reflective visual mapping, the Designtransposal workshop opened the research exploration into pairing emotions with the plastic things, which comes as an outcome of Angry Plastic Bag from the Falmouth workshop, or in London, the pilot workshop brought apathy towards waste and recycling to the research table and prompted the praxis to critically and visually engage in the socio-emotional patterns hidden in the practices of everyday litter, seeking meanings in and with things and sui generis, and creating new design vocabularies in plastic disposal and design research. As we become aware of the subtle ways in which I and we collectively avoid the unsettling reality of toxic chronic disaster, the future scenarios are posed for this research. Can we change our actions and infuse social, cultural, plastic materiality values with the knowledge? Or we will continue to be living, littering, and practicing every day in denial? Shop till we drop. What will be the option? Sadly, there is no radical conclusion in this super wicked issue of plastic pollution in our oceans. The plastic materiality introduced so far by global production will ultimately end up being discarded, carrying a toxic message of the Anthropocene eras to the futures. As our planetary environment undergoes radical changes, reconsidering the living conditions of animals and people, perceptions of values of nature, or being a part of the nature, will have to change too. In spite of our daily dependence on plant and animal life as our source of food and the importance for the ecological balance, our representation of them rarely focuses beyond their immediate utility value. The workshop Invisible Outcomes was a potent conversation on how individuals and communities in aging communities can take collective and creative action to meet the challenge of reducing plastic packaging consumption and use, bring awareness around future discard, and how it is possible to minimize or visualize or even vision the ocean deep pollution in the future. Plasticized have created a place and space devoted to the new environment violating, named the Plastisphere. How could they transgress this unholy form of consumer culture? Perhaps in taking on seemingly valueless discard plastic, in transposing plastic things into floating objects and 3D installations. Plasticized, KraalD land installation can reveal how disposed materiality can contain a dimension for spaces of possibility, creating spaces for new values, and even a hope for a global and planetary 21st and 22nd century depollution processes. It feels as a personal imperative call to all human collective that in order for us to raise new planetary paradigm, as which we'll need it, I and we need to start fundamentally transposing the way we design, manufacture, distribute, consume, and naturally dispose in our toxic presence and even more toxic futures. This is the last slide that presents a glossary of KraalD terms and languagings, looking at KraalD, design disposal, and design transposal. And I want to thank you for watching this video and bless the waters and support the self-change. Thank you.